Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. I think we have people from different time zones here. We will wait up to 5 minutes for everyone to join. While we are waiting, just let us know where you're from, if you can hear us, if you can see us. London, wow, 8 in the morning. Germany, Ukraine, India. Hi, everyone. Melbourne and Elliot.
Yes, so I used to be based in Melbourne. I moved to the country a year ago now, so I'm actually based in Orange, New South Wales, specifically a place called Kangarooby, which is in the middle of nowhere. But I miss Melbourne.
Yeah, let's wait for a few more minutes.
It's too late there. No, sure. I just the sun is setting outside, so I'm trying to.
I can see you well. I think it's
Right,
okay.
good. Okay. Just look a bit jaundiced. So.
Some of our students joined.
Great.
Webinar. Yeah. Maria, Serhi, Natalia. This webinar is the last class for our Salesforce course. So I think
Right. Okay.
students are very excited.
Great.
Okay, I think we will start, and then
Okay.
if everyone joins. So yeah, everyone, welcome here, and thank you for joining us. Today we have the last webinar of our Salesforce Marketing Cloud webinar series. So we have our headliner, Elliot. He's from Australia. He's a Salesforce Marketing Cloud expert and a marketing technology architect. Elliot speaks a lot on the international events, including the Dreamforce conference. He's also consulted some of the largest brands on Marketing Cloud, and he has written several articles and books on Marketing Cloud. So he has a lot to share with you. I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you, Elliot, for joining our course and for sharing your knowledge. Also, this webinar will be available in recording after the webinar here on LinkedIn, but also on our YouTube channel, so you can just check it out once again. Enjoy.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Teresa, for that warm introduction and for the invitation to present today. I'm particularly interested, given the primary audience, and that is many attendees from Ukraine. I've spent some time in Ukraine with my family a few years ago, and so it's kind of a deep affection. It's very sad to see that the current state, what's been events unfolding in Ukraine. So, our thoughts and prayers are certainly with you, and I'm keen to help share my knowledge and build your skills. So, well, let's get straight into it then. I've got a couple of clicking things to do. So. As you already know, my name is Elliot Harper. I'm a Marketing Cloud technical architect at a company called CloudKettle. CloudKettle are based in Halifax in Canada. I'm the, I think, only employee outside of Canada in Australia, where I've been since 2003. And as was mentioned, I've authored a few books on Marketing Cloud, including my latest book on the right-hand side, the AMP-Script Guide, which is this comprehensive scripting reference manual for Marketing Cloud, which I co-authored with Adam Spriggs. So it's now in its second edition. And I've been awarded this Salesforce MVP, which is an award given by Salesforce to recognize experts and their contribution to the community. So it's really a privilege to receive that award. And I've received that for the past 6 consecutive years. I've been working with Marketing Cloud since 2013, so 10 years now, and very active in the community on a number of different levels. I organize the Marketing Cloud Developer User Group. In fact, I'll just give a shameless plug for that. So you can go and check it out on Trailblazer Community Groups. We actually got a meeting next week where I'll be talking about key takeaways from Dreamforce from a Marketing Cloud perspective. And I've also helped develop a few Marketing Cloud certifications, so probably you can blame me for all those curly questions. So we've got a lot to cover today, as you can see from this list. So I think we'll just get straight into it. So Marketing Cloud uses a number of different data models for storing data or attributes. The first of which is the all subscribers list. Now, this list, and the purpose of the list is a master list of all people, or they use the noun subscribers, who can receive email communications from your organization. So when an email is sent from a Marketing Cloud and the subscriber doesn't exist in this all subscribers list, then they're appended to it as a record. And fundamentally, the all subscribers list has 2 main purposes. So number one, it identifies the status of a subscriber, that is, whether they've unsubscribed from receiving emails or emails to their address are undeliverable, for example, they're held, or they've been returned, that is, they've bounced. And secondly, it can optionally be used to store data related to a subscriber through what are called profile attributes. So I just want to call out some considerations and best practices. So firstly, considerations. There are a limited data types are available when storing subscriber data as profile attributes. Specifically, you can choose from text, number, or date types. Next, profile attributes are defined globally and they apply to all subscriber records in an account. You can't define these attributes at a list or group level. And also, profile attributes can only exist as a one-to-one relationship against a subscriber. Like, I can't use these profile attributes to store relational data like my purchase history. And you also need to understand how email addresses are updated, which I'll cover in the next slide. Just a few best practices. Please remember that subscriber key is a system of record, and as such, you need to use a unique identifier that persists over the subscriber's lifetime, like maybe a customer number or ID. So you should not use an email address as a subscriber key value. There are some rare instances when it may be appropriate to use an email address, but this is advice given by Salesforce. It's just not. Email addresses can change, and people can have multiple email addresses. It's just not a good system of record. Additionally, profile attributes are stored by the platform as a string type, irrespective of the data types that you assign to them. And so when they're retrieved, the platform casts them to their assigned type, like a date, when required for like a conditional evaluation or filtering. But in turn, this can impact performance. So if you have non-text profile attributes like date, number, Boolean, decimal values, I'd recommend storing them in a data extension. So as I just mentioned, subscriber email addresses can change. And many people are unaware of this behavior, but in most scenarios, when an email address changes, the platform applies the changes to that subscriber record at the time when an email is sent. But in some scenarios, you might need to update subscribers' email address in the all subscribers list before you send an email to ensure that it's sent to the correct email address. Adam Spriggs once told me that you learn Marketing Cloud by making mistakes, and the biggest mistakes you make, the more you learn. And this is certainly one mistake that I made, kind of an assumption early on in my Marketing Cloud career. And many people do. They just assume that I'm sending like an email maybe from just the Content Builder send flow, and I've got my sendable data extension, and because that sendable data extension contains this list of updated email address, they assume that this is the email address that will be used when an email is sent, but that's not necessarily the case. So you can see kind of some scenarios here when it is and it isn't updated. So in scenarios where these three scenarios here, where you are maybe sending an email from Automation Studio, a send email activity, or a UI send, or using the Content Builder send flow, then you will need to go and update the all subscribers list. And you can do that by importing records to the all subscribers list, or kind of configuring an automation to update the email address and against the subscriber. Otherwise, your email will be sent to the wrong email address, the old email address. So please just bear that in mind. So that's the all subscribers list. Next data model that I want to talk about is subscriber lists. Now, in Marketing Cloud, a list is a collection of subscribers that belong to the all subscribers list. And I think it's important to call out that this is really a legacy feature that actually predates data extensions. I would discourage the use of lists wherever possible. I think there will be a time in the kind of mid to long term where they'll eventually be phased out. And certainly, I'd say their use today isn't necessarily discouraged, but it's not available in, like, you can't use lists in Journey Builder, for example. But for sake of completeness, I want to kind of mention them here. So they provide a simple and convenient method to segment your audience and identify who should receive specific email communications, like your weekly newsletter or loyalty members. And lists are also used to store a subscriber's subscription status for a given list. And you can actually do some basic segmentation on lists into what are called filtered groups or random groups. Some considerations for using lists. So firstly, they can only contain subscriber records, not other data sets related to the subscriber. Also, you can't overwrite lists. You can only add or update subscriber records in a list. Also, remember that or consider that if a subscriber unsubscribes from the all subscribers lists, then at that time they're also unsubscribed from lists and groups. And if the subscriber status later changes back to active on the all subscribers list, they're not automatically resubscribed to the lists and groups they're previously subscribed to. Some best practices here that firstly, I would recommend only choosing lists if you require simplicity in your data model over performance. And also, this is just general advice from Salesforce, is that lists should not be used to segment a large number of subscribers, like greater than 500,000 records. The next data model I want to talk about this morning, this afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are, a data extension. So a data extension in Marketing Cloud is effectively a relational database table that can be used to store data related to a subscriber. Now, these data extensions are effectively they're ultimately fields in a Microsoft SQL database. And as a result, they often offer a lot more flexibility and extensibility than lists, as they provide a relational data model and support a much greater number of data types. They also provide permission-based access, where you can assign different policies to fields and deletion. And you can also share data extensions across business units. So I think it's important to point out that very granular permission-based access. And I actually, I think I mention this later. So some considerations that data extensions, don't treat data extensions as a data warehouse. I mean, the kind of underneath they use Transact SQL. Transact SQL, this is a kind of Microsoft technology, and it has a row limit of 8,060 bytes. And columns that don't fit within that limit are placed off row in a separate internal table. So what actually has to happen as a result, if you go and have a data extension with 300-400 fields, and kind of very large fields, the platform has to execute multiple queries just to retain a single row for data extension records. So as a guide that you should limit the number of fields in a data extension, and Salesforce provide a guide of no more than 50 fields and field lengths to 100 characters or less. Look, ultimately, of course, you can have more than 50 fields, but it's going to really ultimately depend on that field length. I would advise just creating these consider creating skinny tables and building a more of a canonical data model where you don't try and store all of, say, subscriber data in a single large whopping data extension. Another consideration to use is that referential integrity is not enforced. So this is the process of validating relationships between data extensions. So what this means is that you can delete a record from a data extension, even though its primary key is used as a reference in another data extension. And kind of put a different way as well, you can, or another scenario is that I can have maybe 4 automations that are all running concurrently, that is at the same time, all reading from the same data extension, while another process, perhaps an email send, is updating that very data extension. And there's no notion of lock contention, and as a result, you can kind of quickly run into problems. So you have to go and design or architect your when you go and architect your data model, and we'll be talking about this later. You just need to consider that you don't have multiple concurrent operations running on that same data extension. Some best practices is that I encourage you to lighten the platform load and only import the data that you need for your marketing communications. As I'll talk about later today, often there's temptation just to import everything. And we've seen this data fetish with Marketing Cloud users. So avoid voluminous storage. I mean, I would recommend as a guide keeping the number of records under 10 million, which is really regarded as best practice, whether you're talking about data extensions or even Salesforce objects. When you start have hundreds of millions of records, then you can, for Marketing Cloud, you can see query starter timeout. It's the same with Salesforce objects that reports would start to run sluggishly. So please don't treat Marketing Cloud as a data warehouse. And again, we'll be touching this on later. Additionally, I encourage you to go and apply a data retention policy. So don't store data perpetually in the platform. If you've got a data extension for a given send for a newsletter that you sent out 4 years ago, there's no need to store that in the platform. When you conduct that send, maybe apply a data retention policy to move that data extension 6 months later, as it not only just contaminates your, well, it makes it harder to search and find data, but also it can result in compliance issues. Again, I'll touch on that later. Also, please consider assigning appropriate data types to data extension fields. For example, if you have a Boolean field, then set it as Boolean. So while data can be cast to a different type through queries, it really adds complexity and can impact performance. Additionally, apply or assign an appropriate character length to text fields. Often I see people just leave it as a default value of 50 characters, or even blow them out to 500 characters, just in case. But if you know the product code is going to be limited to 10 characters, then set the field length to 10 characters. Or like a Salesforce ID is always going to be 18 characters. I mean, longer field lengths will impose an overhead that really isn't necessary. And finally, as I just mentioned earlier, avoid concurrent operations. So, ensure that you don't have, for example, multiple automations reading from or updating the same data extension. The next data model in Marketing Cloud I want to talk about today is the contact model. So this model, which is available through an app called Contact Builder, unifies the data model across different channels. So the all subscribers list that we discussed earlier, that's exclusively for email. However, Contact Builder enables you to create relationships between the all subscribers list and also lists used by other channels like Mobile Connect for sending SMS messages, Mobile Push, and device IDs, in addition to data extensions. So the contact model has this notion of a contact, and a contact is effectively an abstract entity of whom a person represents. It's important to also point out that if you're used to working with Sales Cloud, it's a contact is really not the same thing as a contact in Sales Cloud. As a contact in Marketing Cloud, it could be a lead or a contact or user from Sales Cloud, just to confuse you. But really, I think it's what you have to remember that Marketing Cloud was ExactTarget was born out of one channel at that time, and that's email. They've had to adapt this kind of a notion of a subscriber to more of a contact or an individual to accommodate other channel addresses such as device IDs and mobile numbers. So the contact model also enables you to create cardinal relationships between the different data sources. And in turn, you can use these relationships in journeys, real-time decisioning, like in decision split activities or defining a goal or exit criteria. So, for example, perhaps you want to eject a contact from a journey once they make a purchase. Kind of ironically, this contact model and contact builder, which is I think it initially it debut around 2014. It's it's the early version, I believe, of a CDP, where it empowers marketers to unify different data sources and create this canonical data model by creating relationships between these disparate data sets. Some other so some considerations then. So firstly, these contact models are specific to a business unit, and you can't share contact models across different business units. Also, it's important to call out that a contact, at least from a billing and usage perspective, includes many things. It could be all contacts in your contact model, and also any individual who's received a message from any channel, even if they don't appear in the all contacts list. That is, you are effectively charged for storing these contact records in Marketing Cloud, even if you're not communicating with them. So many customers are kind of unaware of this and are frequently surprised when they get this bill for overages. You can go into the report catalog and run a report and monitor how many contacts that you're storing in Marketing Cloud. So next, Salesforce synchronized data extensions. So while these synchronized data extensions are available in the contact model enabled through Marketing Cloud Connect, that is, you can synchronize any standard or custom object into data extensions. In fact, let me withdraw what I said. This is going to kind of confuse you as of an advanced topic. I'm going to skip across over to some best practices. So when you create relationships between attribute sets in Data Designer, I encourage you to link them using primary keys to create those relationships. It's when you do, the platform creates an index based on these relationships, which has performance benefits. Another thing to note is the contact key value must match subscriber key values used in Email Studio. Remember, I talked about having a subscriber key as a system of record. Well, a contact key has to be that same value, otherwise they'll be treated as a different person. And avoid creating very deep, complex relationships when linking different attribute sets in Contact Builder, as if you do so, this will have a direct impact on performance. Now, the next type of data model in Marketing Cloud I'd like to have a chat about is a suppression list. So a suppression list in Marketing Cloud is a list of subscribers who you don't want to receive your communications. So these lists really used for suppressing emails and can filter out subscribers from receiving emails. And you can add a suppression list to your send either from an you can add record to a suppression list either from Automation Studio import activity, from an API, or there's actually a import wizard in Email Studio. Additionally, you can choose to make these suppression lists public. That is, if you're using the default subscription center, subscribers can choose whether they want to be added to these suppression list. Another thing to note about suppression lists is that, and why you may want to use them, is that They can also be assigned to email activities in a journey. So if you've got a list of people who you don't want to receive your emails, then you can create that relationship when configuring the email activity. Auto suppression lists, on the other hand, is yet another type of suppression list, which is different from a suppression list. So auto suppression lists enable you to prevent specific email addresses from receiving messages in Marketing Cloud. A typical use case for this, and I believe like one of the reasons that this feature exists, is when you're replatforming, that is, you're moving from a different marketing platform over to Salesforce Marketing Cloud, and the system of record will be different, but all you really are able to all you really care about is that you have these specific email addresses who have opted out of receiving emails. So that's a great use case. You can import these records into a suppression list, auto suppression list. And unlike suppression lists, where you have to go and manually select or choose those lists at a set time or when configuring email activities, auto suppression lists, as their name implies, automatically suppresses email addresses from being sent an email without requiring that user to remember to do something. You can either apply these auto suppression lists at a send classification level, that is, you want them to only apply to maybe commercial sends typically, or transactional, or both, or even at a sender profile level. So a sender profile in Marketing Cloud defines who the email is from, so based on that, you can kind of create relationships to auto suppress based on your sender profile. Just one other consideration to call out is that when you go and create or delete an auto suppression list, it will republish all triggered send and journey emails. If you want to learn more about that and why that's a good and potentially bad thing, check out my latest video on youtube.com/CloudKettle. I've got a video about globally updating content just using auto suppression lists. So there is another type of list in Marketing Cloud, and that's a publication list. So publication lists in Marketing Cloud help you manage how your subscribers received different categories of emails or SMS messages. Like when you send an email newsletter, you can associate that send with a corresponding publication list to identify the type of content in an email. And when you do this, the subscribers in your sendable data extension are appended to this list if they don't already exist in it. And so these lists can also be configured to be publicly available in the default subscription center. Or if you create a custom preference center, then you can use the API to retrieve the subscribers' publication lists using the Marketing Cloud API. And when a subscriber opts out from a publication list, then the subscription status is updated against that list. I would say the main advantage of using publication lists over another method, like storing user preferences in a data extension, is that publication lists enable auditability. That is, I can see when a subscriber opted out from a list or opted back into it. And having that kind of persistent audit trail and providing that kind of data lineage is very important in this era of consent. And using a data extract activity in Automation Studio, you can retrieve all this historical data. So in summary, they provide a persistent audit trail. Also, as we can see in the screenshot here, we can share these publication lists with other business units in the account at a kind of a granular or kind of discrete level and access permissions. And yeah, so that concludes the kind of exhaustive coverage of all the different available data models in Marketing Cloud. Now let's talk about data transformation and segmentation. So Marketing Cloud includes Automation Studio, which is a platform that automates repetitive processes through a multi-step workflow. And applications for Automation Studio include things like performing extract, transform, and load, or ETL processes to import file-based data from external systems. And we can also typically use Automation Studio for automating recurring marketing activities, like sending monthly email newsletters to customers. Think of an automation as a linear batch process. Step one, do this. Step two, do this. Step three, do this. Some different considerations and best practices for data transformations. So firstly, while Marketing Cloud enables you to process data from external systems, you should only import the data you need from your marketing campaigns and journeys. And again, this is going to be a recurring theme in this session, but you shouldn't use Marketing Cloud to store everything. This isn't a silver bullet. It's not designed to be a replacement for a data warehouse. As data warehouses use software and specific resources that are optimized for business intelligence and data analysts operations. Another consideration is that large data sets in email marketing platforms, be it Marketing Cloud or anything, that they just don't scale well. And you end up with these series of very large schema-dependent data sets. Now, if you need to if you have voluminous or big data and need to be kind of orchestrating data ingestion and unifying that data together to create a single customer record and segmenting your data, Marketing Cloud is really the wrong platform. You should be looking at a CDP like Salesforce CDP to complete that, and then just making that data actionable and injecting those that audience into journeys. In summary, Marketing Cloud is just one component, or should be one component in your marketing technology stack or MarTech stack. Also, I discourage you from using Journey Builder as an extract, transform, and load tool. And I point this out. I see many Marketing Cloud users who choose to use Journey Builder as this convenient tool to bulk upset object records in Sales Cloud, like we can see on this example here, in this screenshot here. And while Journey Builder includes different activities for creating and updating records in Salesforce, any corresponding operation is still subject to governor limits to ensure that processes don't monopolize shared resources in this multi-tenant environment. And so if you're, as a result, if you're using Journey Builder to batch update records, large record volumes in Sales Cloud, you can run into problems. I mean, I've had one customer's noticed that when updating like 12,000 records an hour, they were running into all kinds of problems with the corresponding operations just kind of timing out. Additionally, so look, a Journey Builder really isn't designed to be a tool for bulk loading data in Sales Cloud. If you have a requirement to load data from Marketing Cloud to Sales Cloud, then you should really be looking at an integration platform like MuleSoft. So next, I want to briefly discuss some data encryption options, and just so that you're familiar with these terms and you understand what data encryption options are available to you in storing data in Marketing Cloud and also transferring data to and from Marketing Cloud. So the first encryption option is called TDE, or Transparent Data Encryption, also known as Data at Rest Encryption. And this uses the feature of Microsoft SQL Server to encrypt your entire database transparently. That is, as an end user, Marketing Cloud still kind of behaves in exactly the same way. It's just this encryption is occurring behind the scenes, and the way that it works is that it stores your entire database in an encrypted format at a file level, and in doing so, it prevents someone who has physical access to the database, that is, if they were to break into a data center and run off with a server, that they can't then go and mount that on another SQL Server instance and access your data. And because unless they have that encryption key, which uses AES-256 encryption. I kind of call it out is that this is often a compliance requirement for financial institutions and also regulatory compliance. There's also another flavor of TDE called encryption on a database, which does exactly the same thing, except rather than having a dedicated database, it's shared with other tenants on your stack, and as a result, it's actually quite a bit cheaper. I think I'd also like to notice that there's this move to Hyperforce. So Hyperforce is a transition away from using using a dedicated data centers for Marketing Cloud in different regions over to Amazon Web Services. And in fact, just this month, they had announced at Dreamforce, they had the first Marketing Cloud customer running on Hyperforce, which is this motorcycle company in India. And as a byproduct of that, these Marketing Cloud customers where their stack is on Hyperforce, they get encryption at rest by default. Another data encryption option available in Marketing Cloud is field level encryption. So this is different from TDE in that it encrypts the data at the application layer. That is, if you were to go and view records in a data extension, you can't actually see the plain text data. You just see an encrypted value of it, and that value is this data is encrypted at either send time or when a query is run. So I would, there are many limitations and considerations with using field level encryption. My recommendation would be, if you have a choice, use TDE over field level encryption. Tokenized sending, really for completeness, I mentioned this. I don't see too many tokenized sending customers these days, but this enables you to store your customer data outside of Marketing Cloud, like in your own data warehouse. And the way that this works is at send time, Marketing Cloud will make an API call to an external endpoint that you define and exchanges the token for the data which will be present in, say, a single data extension. There are kind of some limitations. It can only be used at send time. You can't be used to retrieve data, for example, from a decision split activity when a contact is moving through a journey. But I'd say the applications for tokenized sending are quite limited. And I've implemented tokenized sending myself and are not really a strong advocate of it. Also, regarding data encryption, finally, I think it's important to note that when transferring data to and from Marketing Cloud, you can optionally choose to encrypt and decrypt your data using PGP or GPG. And I'll explain later in our session why I'd encourage you to consider doing that. So, which moves me on to the second half of my session today, and I appreciate that there are probably many questions already flowing in, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of my session today. But I want to finish off by talking about some key data architectural principles. As I observe that many Marketing Cloud users store and manage data in Marketing Cloud, often with little or no thought into how they're doing it. And as a result, there are often can be some significant consequences if you don't carefully consider how you're managing data in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So I'm going to highlight this, and I've actually also published a printed booklet and an ebook, which is publicly available. And I'll share a link at the end of the session today. So the first principle that I want to share is purpose. So that is, you need to consider or determine the purpose of your data source. As I said before, there are many Marketing Cloud customers who think that, well, we're just going to store everything for all time. And, as long as Salesforce has a lenient view on data storage, which is essentially today unlimited at no additional cost, then why not, right? And it turns out that there is really such a thing as too much data. And there are some significant consequences of storing it. The more data you have, the greater the compliance risk, the greater the security and privacy issues. And having useless data mounting up in data extensions can actually be very time consuming to troubleshoot and fix when things break, like when query activities or import activities in Automation Studio start timing out. So I encourage you to establish or determine a data purpose for each of your data sources. And to do this, start a well-developed mission statement detailing how your data is going to be used and who is going to use it. So, which in turn will help you validate whether you actually need that data in the first place. The next principle I want to touch on, an important one, is storage. So once you've established the purpose of your data, you should be determining how long you actually need it for. Now, once again, due to this absence of Marketing Cloud data storage fees, and this is a policy which will change in the future, so be warned, platform users quite happily are storing their data, forever. And I frequently see SendLog data extensions and sendable data extensions buried away out of mind, accumulating thousands of different data extensions across business units. And, as I said, without any performance or cost impact, there's little incentive for users to delete this data. But there are several issues with that storage philosophy. So because the first is when you have mountains of data, the chances are you don't have quick and easy access to it. They're just buried in this file name taxonomy, which probably meant something to someone a while ago, but not you. And secondly, and more importantly, you shouldn't just keep data just because it might be useful to someone in the future. Security laws prevent you from storing data indefinitely, like GDPR, HIPAA, CPRA, just to mention a few. So you need to determine why you need to store data and identify if there are any legal requirements for retaining it. The good news is that in Marketing Cloud, it's very easy to establish a data retention policy for your data and implement this at the data extension level. And look, I mean, if you have a really valid reason to store your data perpetually, then look, Marketing Cloud probably isn't the right repository for it, as data extensions can easily be either intentionally or accidentally deleted or overwritten. So you should maybe looking at using a data warehouse or a data lake for more perpetual storage. The third principle I want to talk about today is simplicity. So as I talked about before, a common approach to automating data processing in Marketing Cloud, and I mean, let's face it, Marketing Cloud is a data platform. Without data, you can't do anything in Marketing Cloud, and so the way to ingest data into Marketing Cloud is primarily by using Automation Studio. And while this is a very robust automation platform, you need to be designing your automations with efficiency in mind. And query activities often create a common bottleneck as they enable really database administrators to go wild and write some very inspiring lengthy statements and multiple levels. Look, while long code itself isn't necessarily a problem for Marketing Cloud, the code is typically accompanied by a level of difficulty. So when a query fails, or maybe it needs to be updated to accommodate additional fields, or kind of some another business requirement, it takes a considerable amount of time to firstly isolate and fix. And in turn, this impacts the timeliness to the business, which is can be really critical in marketing. So, with data transformation and segmentation, I would ask that, remind you, simplicity trumps complexity in efficient data architecture. Do you really need a show pony or a workhorse? And if you think it is really still necessary to write these very complex SQL statements, then you're probably using the wrong platform in the first place. You should probably consider processing your data upstream with a fit-for-purpose platform like Salesforce CDP for segmentation. The fourth principle we're going to be discussing today is your data schema. So a data schema, what is this? It's an abstract design that represents data storage in data extensions in the case of Marketing Cloud. And a data schema not only defines data types, data lengths, and required fields, but also identifies relationships between data extensions. So think of a schema as like a blueprint to ensure efficient organization of your data so that it's easy to manage and maintain. Now, these data extensions in Marketing Cloud, unlike Salesforce objects, they provide this blank canvas. And as a result, I've seen many ill-considered data extension schemas containing unlimited field length, excessive use of primary keys, and hundreds of fields, all of which add an unnecessary overhead. So just a few kind of best practices. The first is to define a common vocabulary, that is, adopt a field naming convention that has context and meaning to others and is consistent across different data extensions. Also consider preserving words in field names by formatting them in what's called snake case. We use underscores instead of space characters, as this just enables portability when exchanging data files to other platforms, which aren't able to ingest headers with space characters or the reserve characters. And secondly, I encourage you to consider how your data sources relate to each other. And the best way to do this is by creating an ERD, or entity relationship diagram, as we see on this slide here. In this case, I've created a ERD representing customer order data. And here we can see that on the left-hand side, we've got this notion of a single customer can have 0 or many orders, and an order for one order, you can have one or many line items. This is just one example of this UML notation. There are different approaches to notation, but I encourage you to go through this exercise as it's helpful for you to explain the cardinality of your kind of data relationships to other users. The fifth principle I encourage you to employ is data governance. Data governance is actually a very broad topic, but largely speaking, it refers to the discipline of planning how your organization uses data. So it's handled consistently throughout your business to ensure that new users can extract value from all the information collected in it. And proper data governance is actually essential in Marketing Cloud. So the best way to apply a data governance regime in Marketing Cloud is by setting realistic and measurable goals. Now, goals are going to differ by your company, but consider adopting these three goals set as a starting or initial framework. So firstly, understandable. So for data to be understood across your organization, you need to structure it in a way that it can be used effectively. And this goes hand in hand with the data schema discussed in the previous section, where your data dictionary has a taxonomy which is context or meaning to all who use it. And this really needs to be well documented. So one of the biggest areas of technical debt is actually documentation debt or lack of documentation. Next, your data needs to be compliant. So data and privacy compliance is a vast topic, but at a minimum, you need to ensure that you're complying to applicable data privacy and protection laws. So you need to go and determine a legal basis for processing your data. And you need to so that is for determine why what is the legal basis for retaining and processing the data. Perhaps for example, for marketing, have they provided explicit consent and is typically disclosed in your privacy policy. You will explain how you're using customer data and what it's being used for. Additionally, it's important to document the data lineage, that is revealing the entire life cycle and flow from that data source when you first acquire the customer data to consumption, how it's used, and all the transformations that the data underwent along the way, how the data was transformed, what was changed, and why. The third goal that I would recommend in data governance is make your data trustworthy. So data governance is a trust-based process. So if data can't be trusted, then this is a risk, and at worst, it can result in wrong business decisions. It can compromise customer relationships by targeting them with irrelevant and wrong content. So you need to build trust and validate that your data is accurate and complete for each of your data stores. So like if you're storing website activity for customers, you need to ensure that all page visits and actions are correctly captured. You need to also ask or check, do product page visits correlate to active products in a product data extension? Check your data is complete. So there are ways to go and automate this validation in Marketing Cloud. For example, if you expect that certain fields in a data extension should contain a value, then create an automation to query that data and use a validation activity to report on exceptions. So you just need to be checking that your data is trustworthy. The sixth and final principle that I want to talk about in our session today is security. So data security is all about keeping your data sensitive. So it's all about keeping sensitive and confidential data secure, yet accessible to those who need it. Now, some Marketing Cloud customers assume that actually security isn't my problem, right? Because the platform is hosted in this highly secure managed environment. And look, that might be true, but there's still plenty of opportunity for your data to be compromised. You need to remember, acknowledge that cybercrime is the fastest growing crime globally, which increases every year in sophistication, in size, and cost. And it takes on many forms, but unauthorized data access or a data breach that we commonly see, and there's been a very high profile one this week in Australia, I think, where they compromised 11 million customer records and will have to go and pay for people to get new driving licenses. This is commonly used for identity theft, and it comes in different flavors, or hold our organizations to ransom if payment isn't received. But I just want to call out a few best practices to help mitigate cybercrime and security risks in Marketing Cloud. And the first is user access reviews. So you need to periodically review that only legitimate users have access to Marketing Cloud. So that is, when a staff member or contractor leaves an organization, their Marketing Cloud access isn't automatically revoked, and this can be overlooked. So you need to ensure that you have regular access, user access reviews, and revoke access for staff and contractors who have either left the organization or no longer require access to the platform. Also, consider what's called a principle of least privilege, or POLP. This refers to the practice of enforcing the minimal level of user permissions that allows the user to perform his or her role. I often see Marketing Cloud accounts where all users have a very broad permission scope, that is, they're assigned a system administrator. And in turn, this can result in users intentionally or unintentionally perform malicious activities like delete data extensions. Um, so additionally, if you assign this very broad scope, they can actually get access to API credentials, or what are called OAuth credentials, and this in turn can be used to perform activities like retrieving data, even creating new user accounts, even after their account is disabled. So Marketing Cloud actually offers a highly granular permission set, enabling these custom user roles to be created. And I encourage you to create custom roles that tightly align with responsibilities. So users can only access specific applications and features on the platform that they need to perform their work. The next best practices I want to talk about today is file transfer. So all Marketing Cloud editions include an SFTP account, and there are a number of different authentication options, which include password-based, SSH key-based, or a combination. And I would encourage you to use key-based authentication. Without diving into a technical explanation, it's possible to guess passwords, but you can't guess a key. Additionally, in fact, I'd advocate using both password and key-based authentication, as the main justification is that if your private key is compromised, then the attacker can't compromise your SFTP account without the password. Similarly, if your password is compromised, then they'll still need the SSH key. It's still not foolproof, but it does provide dual factor authentication, and it does make it harder for an attacker to compromise your credentials. Now, I touched on this earlier, file encryption. So when transferring files to and from Marketing Cloud, you should also consider encrypting your files using PGP. And many users assume that SFTP replaces the need for PGP, but it doesn't. SFTP and PGP have two very different goals. PGP encrypts your data payload, while SFTP encrypts the file transfer. At a minimum, you need transport encryption. On top of that, data encryption is only going to help. So I encourage you to encrypt and decrypt your data using PGP or GPG files. They're effectively the same. The only difference between GPG and PGP is how they're licensed to the public. And finally, encryption at rest. So just bear in mind that certain regulations require data to be encrypted at rest. And as I mentioned, it's an optional feature in Marketing Cloud, which comes in two main different flavors. Either there's a dedicated database for your Marketing Cloud account or shared with other Marketing Cloud accounts. So look, in summary, good data architecture can help ensure that your data is secure, accessible, and available, and can be trusted. And following the principles that I've just shared today will help avoid significant issues in the future. But good data architecture requires careful planning, collaboration, validation, and extensive documentation to ensure that it's effective. And this comes at a cost. But if you think good data architecture is expensive, then you should try bad data architecture. To learn more about some of these principles I've just covered, I've actually just published a little ebook that you can go and download from this URL below, or you can follow me on LinkedIn. I've just shared a link to this resource today. I'll also go and put a link to this in the comments, so you can kind of click on that and download it for free at your leisure. So that concludes my presentation today. We've got 24 minutes now, so I'm going to open up the floor for questions. If you have a question, please feel free to post a comment in the window, and I can see that we already have a stream of comments, which I'm just weeding through. So let me get straight into them. So the first one from Ivan asks, publication lists are used to opt in or opt out from different campaigns. And the answer to that is not really. So a publication list is, I guess you
Hello. We are experiencing some technical issues, and let's just wait for Elliot and see if he can rejoin us. Let's wait for him.
Hi guys. Yeah, I think we have some tech problem. Let's wait for a few minutes for Elliot to rejoin us.
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm so sorry. Looks like I I got disconnected. I think I've been talking to myself, answering questions for the past 7 minutes. At what point did I get disconnected? Did I finish the conclude the presentation? Was I answering questions when we lost connection? Teresa?
With Ivan, yeah, you had the last question from Ivan.
Ivan, thank you so much. Yeah, so let me go and rewind. So specifically, Sajid asked, can you talk about Salesforce Sync DE and why it's not a good idea to use as a contact model in Contact Builder? Again, I'd like to revoke that line item. This was an observation that I noted after an anomaly after some testing I was doing a few months ago, and since then I've gone back in and validate that isn't their behavior. So please ignore that line item. The other question was, after creating a publication list and suppression list, how can we import that data? So with a suppression list, you can use an import activity in automation. A publication list, you can interact with a publication list in much the same way as you can in data extensions. That is, you can go and query. I'm pretty, I had to go and check. I'm pretty sure an import activity, you can go and import them to a publication list as a available option. If anyone thinks that's not the case, then please speak up. Any other questions come out? No. So again, go and have a look at that link I just shared if you'd like to download a copy of this ebook. I also just want to share a couple of other resources. So I have my own vlog and actually a backlog of videos. I've got applying a number of updates, which hopefully in the next 30 to 60 days. But go and check out mc.chat. I've got a series of 2-minute videos. Additionally, I've got another video series called Marketing Cloud Minutes. You'll see a link to this on MC Chat. There it is, just on this YouTube playlist. Another resources, I'd give a shameless plug for my Amscript course, which is a 75-minute course on Pluralsight. You can go and sign off for Pluralsight for free. It's been a really successful course, but it teaches you absolutely everything you would need to know about the platform. Yeah, so some resources to share with you there. If you have any technical questions about Salesforce Marketing Cloud, I really encourage you to check out Salesforce Stack Exchange. I mean, there are thousands of questions that have been asked about Marketing Cloud, and if you have a question, the chances are that it's been asked or answered before by someone. So as a starting point, I always recommend you to go and check out Salesforce Stack Exchange. And I just want to extend this open invitation. If you find a question that can't be answered or hasn't been answered on Stack Exchange, you can always go and set up a free kind of no obligation 30-minute call with me. I think in the many years that I've offered this service to the community, I've yet to find a question that I can't answer. So I'll just go and send a link to direct link to that now. And so 1 second and 30 minutes. And the chat window there. So I see I'm still streaming. Fantastic. Any other questions at all? Again, if you have questions, feel free to go and add to the comment section. No? I'll give maybe another minute or two for people to ask any questions. I think there are just a couple of people remaining now. Well, I think that concludes our session for today. Again, if you have questions about anything I've covered today or Marketing Cloud in general, feel free to reach out to me directly, and you can do so by setting up a call. Thank you so much for all. Before we sign off, Sasha asked, is there best practice for information attributes to key subscribers' profile when usually using DEs, and how to keep them in sync? So, yeah, good question about subscriber profile attributes. My advice is to not use subscriber profile attributes for many different reasons. Firstly, what you have to remember is that each of these profile attributes are stored as a separate individual record in the underlying platform. That is, if I have 5 profiles, five profile attributes against a subscriber record, it's essentially 5 records in the database. It's the application for profile attributes that I can think of is really for filtering subscribers by business unit. So that is, you've got this notion of business unit filters, which rely on profile attributes. Now, if you're using Salesforce objects, you can go and create relationships between these synchronized objects and profile attributes to keep them in sync. But other than that, you're going to have to rely on some query activities and updating the subscriber. So someone says I'm not audible. So I don't know whether that's. I'm just going to double check my audio, and now I am audible. So I think it's someone's speaker. But I think that kind of concludes our questions for today. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you found this session informative. And again, please reach out if you've got any questions. Okay, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. Okay, bye.